Good to see you again. In this video, I'm going to talk about some of the key elements in living to a ripe old age. Stay with me because this is real powerful stuff. I'm going to start with two anecdotes. So back in the 1980s, there was an American man with AIDS who was given a couple of months to live. So he dealt with his affairs and moved to Nepal. And within a few weeks, his blood profile was normal and he regained his former health. People credited his recovery to the consumption of fresh coconut juice, but there's more to it than that, and I will tell you what that is in a moment. The second story I like to relate is that of an American man dying from cancer who's given a few months to live. So he sells up and moves back to his parents' home on the island of Ikaria. You already might know this story. There's an article on the New York Times website titled "The Island Where People Forget to Die." So in 1976, at the age of 60 years, Stamatis Moriaitis was diagnosed with cancer. He was given 9 months to live, so he moves back to be with his parents on a 2-acre vineyard on the Greek island of Ikaria. At first, he spends most of his time in bed, but then he ventures outside to do some work in the vegetable garden. Then he starts socialising with family and friends over a glass of wine at home and at the local tavern. He reconnects with his faith and goes to church on Sundays. A few years later, he builds on a couple of bedrooms so that his children can come and stay with him. He also works in the vineyard until it produces 400 gallons of wine a year. Not bad for a 2-acre vineyard. So 30 years later, he decides to go back to the States to say hello to his doctors, but they'd all died. So these two stories are archetypal. Someone is dying of a serious illness. They accept the fact that they're going to die and so put their affairs in order. This means they have to make a lot of decisions. Now, if you've ever had to do a serious downsize, you will know that you have to look at each item that you own, reflect upon its meaning, and then make a decision as to whether to keep it or not. You may give the item to a friend or family member, you may sell it, donate it to charity, or take it to the local tip. But either way, there's a process of reflecting upon the past, evaluating your current position, and considering your future destination. Implicit in this process is a review of your values and the conditions that need to be met in order to fulfill your most important values. So these survivors downsize. Typically, but not always, they move away from the city into a semi-rural, rustic village type environment. They spend their days centered around a family home life, doing simple activities such as growing fruit and vegetables, taking care of farm animals, preparing food, building a simple house and home for family, socializing with friends, focusing on spirituality, working quite long hours at moderate physical work, but most importantly, working at their own pace and not being forced to work a 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. 5-day work week. And lo and behold, they regain their health and live to a ripe old age. And then we have the story of the German doctor who developed the model known as Germanic New Medicine. In the 1980s, Dr. Hammer developed cancer after the tragic death of his 19-year-old son in a car accident. Dr. Hammer cured himself using natural methods and then set his mind to wondering if the trauma of his son's death had anything to do with the cancer. So Dr. Hammer went on to study 15,000 cancer patients. In each and every one of the cases, he identified a significant emotional event in the person's life, 1 to 3 years prior to the onset of the illness. So this wasn't to say that emotional trauma and stress caused the answer. It's not to say that emotional trauma and stress cause illness. Just that in those people with cancer, there was always a stress factor prior to its manifestation. So in the two examples that I gave you before, the man who was dying from AIDS and moves from the USA to Nepal, and the man dying from cancer who moves from the USA to the island of Ikaria. Perhaps in the process of downsizing and moving to a different environment and lifestyle, perhaps their unconscious mind is then able to facilitate and complete a healing process. Now keep in mind that one definition of cancer given by the medical profession is that cancer is a healing process that fails to complete itself. Something to think about, isn't it? So what are the key elements to improving your health? Step one is to be proactive and educate yourself and build upon your skill sets. Most of you would have heard of the preppers. The preppers are the people who prepare for the worst case scenario. Typically, they live in a rural setting. They try and be as self-contained as possible, so they may generate their own power. They have a source of fresh water. They stock up on food and guns and ammunition, depending on where they live in the world. And probably most importantly, they develop a skill set that would be essential if they were to survive an environmental catastrophe or war type scenario. So they learn how to do basic mechanics and carpentry, how to grow food, how to generate power. In terms of health, I believe that it's essential that we educate ourselves and develop a skill set that would be useful if we were ever to get sick. So if you're educated about nutrition and healing protocols, then if you ever got sick, you would be 10 steps ahead of the ill-informed. For example, we all know of people who have had cancer. We should have an idea of the healing protocol that they chose. From this, we should be able to formulate an action plan if something similar should happen to us. Let me give you an example from my own life. A couple of years ago, I got 2 frozen shoulders. Just about everyone I spoke to who had a frozen shoulder had steroid shots. My doctor suggested steroid injections. I did my research and I said, no way, the side effects are just too severe. I made some changes and a year later, both shoulders are now at about 80% of what they were in my younger days, and that is without using pharmaceutical drugs. Now, a few years ago, I had chelation therapy for heavy metal toxicity from a German integrative medicine practitioner on the Gold Coast. I had EDTA plus 30 grams of vitamin C dripped into my veins with a cannula. I had 18 IV chelations at $300 each, and then I ran out of money. So I did some research and I made a list of ingredients and equipment required. I watched dozens of YouTube videos on how to self-administer an IV. Unfortunately, I couldn't find a supplier for the EDTA, so I didn't go ahead with the project. However, if it ever should be necessary in the future, then I'm sure that I could find a suitable quality EDTA. And I know for certain that I could administer the IV by myself. So anyway, I continued my research and learned that liposomal vitamin C in some cases may be as effective as intravenous vitamin C. So I searched Google until I found a patented formula, and now I make my own liposomal vitamin C at home. If you would put in liposomal vitamin C, Chris, C-H-R-S, Chris, the guy's name, you probably find his details, but I'll put it in the comments box below, if I remember. I will. So these are just examples of being proactive, of being self-sufficient, of demonstrating initiative and taking action. So proactive people, preppers, empower themselves by preparing for the worst and hoping for the best. Reactive people leave things until too late, and in doing so, they limit their options. And if you look at the lifestyle of those who live in the blue zones, which is a term for the longevity zones, then I think you will find typically that these people are self-reliant. They take care of their own garden, they take care of their home maintenance, they grow some of their food and prepare most of it themselves. And even if they lack a skill, they probably know of someone who has the skill. And this isn't to say that they don't draw upon the skills of experts in the healing profession or any other profession, just that they have what it takes to wash their own car, so to speak. So how to turn your life around? I'm not telling you that it's easy to turn your life around. In fact, sadly, some people are just not able to do it. But if you're watching this video, then I believe that you probably have what it takes. So let's look at the key elements and how to create the Ikaria Effect. 1. Clean your room, as Jordan Peterson says. Start by cleaning out your room. Cleaning out your life. That is, take some action to get your life in order. And I would suggest that you start by writing an autobiography and updating it every year. I would also suggest that you update your resume. 2. Future selfing exercises. Get into the habit of doing future selfing exercises. I use a large sheet of butcher's paper like this and drawing upon the NLP well-formed outcome model. At the top left side of the page, I write present state. Top right of the page, I write desired outcome. In the middle, I write steps and stages. Then you list your present state, present situation, any problems. Top right, you set a goal, which could be 6 or 12 months in the future, or even a 5-year goal. Then use questions, statements, commands to move yourself from the present state to the desired outcome. Make notes as you go along. Bottom right of the page, make a heading for your to-do list. So the future selfing exercise gives you the opportunity to use questions, statements, commands to see where you come from, see where you are now, and where would you like to go in life. If you do a future selfing exercise every few weeks, or at least every few months, then over time you'll get a feel for what works for you and what doesn't. By that I mean that sometimes you might set a goal that you think is important, but in actual fact it's not that important to you, or it's unattainable. On the other hand, you may also discover what is actually important to you in life. So 3, take action. So as you work on your future selfie exercise, thoughts will arise in the mind. Write those thoughts down. Make note of all the things you need to do. Take action on. And then take action. ASAP. If you don't take action when you're hot, then nothing will change. Most importantly, get yourself into an environment in which where there's a possibility for you to flourish. And then we get to downsizing, because part of getting your life in order may involve shifting to a new location, which will give you the opportunity to downsize. In fact, periodically going through all of your possessions, getting rid of the old, can be a great way to clear the mind and give you a new foundation from which to step out with confidence into the world. And then we get to 5, trust in God. So you have the choice to act out of necessity or possibility. So broadly speaking, the modal operators of necessity and possibility are related to your away from values and towards values. And you might have noticed that it's only when you need to do something or a circumstance dictates you take action do you actually make significant change. For example, it may only be when you have to move house do you throw out stuff that you haven't used in years. And if you cast your mind back to the 2 anecdotes that I talked about at the beginning of this video, there was a man with AIDS who moved to Nepal and the man with cancer who moved to the Greek island of Ikaria. So they were both forced to face up to the fact that their lives were over. But rather than lay back and die, their unconscious minds propelled them onto a journey to a life of health and prosperity. Was it easy for them? I doubt it. But what I admire is that with the resources that they had, they were able to get themselves into an environment in which they could regain their health. Now, you may not know what that environment is consciously, and this is where trusting your feelings, trusting yourself, and having trust in existence and trust in God becomes so important. Which is to say that a functional, life-affirmative, spiritual framework is essential. And that's another way of saying having some sort of religion and spiritual framework. So now we get to 6. Prepare a video eulogy. Now, I left this bit to last, but if you're unwell or if you're getting on in years, then I would recommend that you write a last will and testament. I'll tell you why. About 5 years ago, I had septicemia from 3 abscessed teeth. The interesting thing is that there was little tooth pain. And I was dying. I was really sick. And I looked at moving to somewhere in Asia, but I'd left it too late. So I wrote up my will, which involved doing a stock take of all of my possessions, writing a list of friends and relatives and their contact details, going through my business, compiling a list of websites, bank accounts, passwords, cleaning up the files on my computer, etc. It was a lot of work, but I did my best. I also wrote a bardo, which is a document which will be read to me by a friend after I die. So the bardo, it's a Tibetan thing. Osho, the contemporary Zen mystic, updated it back in the 80s. And then I updated it once again using NLP to make it really simple and usable for absolutely anyone. And if you would like an outline of the Abbey Eagle Bardo, you can find it on my website. Anyway, I had the teeth extracted, and I remember spitting blood in the car park after one of the teeth had been extracted. And believe it or not, it felt so good. Anyway, my health improved significantly, but then a few years later, I had another downturn. So I reworked the will and all the business notes, and I updated the Bardo. I went through all of my photographs, put them in chronological order, and then recorded myself reading parts of my autobiography to produce a video eulogy, which I burnt to a DVD. And then I went through all of my possessions, getting rid of stuff that I no longer needed. It was a lot of work, but it felt like I'd given myself a rebirth, a new life as an artist. Sort of weird, because without those wake-up calls, I may never have listened to the call to pursue the artistic energy within myself. So to finish this video, I'd like to give a summary of the 7 secrets to success, which I've covered in detail in previous videos. I'll put a link in the comments box below. So the first one is the present state desired outcome model. So you've got to get familiar with that and the NLP well-formed outcome questions. 2 is your personality type, which is your genius. So learn all you can about personality types. And 3 is your passion and interest. So you get clear on what really interests you. If you follow your passion, then you should find yourself in an environment where there is the potential to flourish. Once you are in that environment, then you need to fit yourself into a role which suits your personality type. Then we get to purpose. Purpose, that is values, drive, motivation. So learn how to elicit and recognize towards and away from values and stay-go values, and identify the conditions that need to be met in order for your values to be fulfilled. And flow. 5 is flow. Flow is defined as an optimal state of consciousness in which you perform at your best. That's Stephen Kotler's definition. And to learn how to get yourself into flow. This is very important because in flow, the body is able to heal itself. So the more time you spend in flow, the more your immune system gets boosted and works better. And then we get to 6, which is like my little mantra. So you set an intention which drives your attention onto the task at hand so you can focus in and concentrate. So you do your goal setting. That is, you do a future selfing exercise. You learn everything you can about your personality type. And part of that is connected with the right people. I can't emphasize that enough. Do what you are good at and then team up with the right people to take care of everything else. So you put yourself in an environment in which you flourish. You engage in activities which interest you. You clarify your values, which means you understand what it is that motivates you. And most importantly, you learn how to get into flow. You've got to understand that process. And you have to recognize what knocks you out of flow and what you need to do to get back into flow. So once you're clear on the task that faces you, then you set an intention which drives your attention onto the task at hand such that you can focus in and concentrate. Then you're plunged into the eternal now. And then number 7 is questions, statements, and commands. And so this is a very important element to all of this, and that is how you think and talk. If you listen to yourself, you find that you ask questions, you make statements, and give commands. And once again, I can't repeat this often enough. I think I'm repeating myself. It's the quality of your thought processes that determine the quality of your outcomes. So what questions do you need to ask? What statements do you need to make? And what commands do you need to give yourself to create the Ikaria Effect? Anyway, if you think I've left out some aspects of the Ikaria Effect, please let me know in the comments box below. If you've not yet subscribed to my channel, please take this opportunity to do so, remembering to click on the bell, ding, and share the video on social media. If you'd like me to do a video on a particular topic, just leave your comments in the box below. I'll see what I can do, and all the best to you. I'll see you again.